So, since my last video was about the NSA, I'll tell you a quick little personal story about the NSA. My dad was in the NSA, and he was in the NSA in the mid-60s during the Cold War, before the government acknowledged there was an NSA. The joke was it stands for no such agency. And he was in the Navy, went in out of high school in 1957, tested extremely high on the IQ charts. So unbeknownst to him, they kind of put him on this special fast track. He became an officer after 3 years in the Navy, called a Mustang. He was the youngest officer in the Navy when he was in it, not forever, but the time that he was in. And then back then you had to get sponsored into the NSA for somebody that was already inside that you knew. And so he was getting sponsored. They were doing security clearances. Meanwhile, he's still a radio operator, Morse code, on a ship that departed San Francisco through the Panama Canal on the way to Norfolk, Virginia. And during the voyage, his security clearance went through. And then all of a sudden, they didn't tell him, and they kind of kept him in the dark about most of this stuff. We kind of, looking back, had to put the pieces together. But all of a sudden, everybody on the ship just started kissing his ass. The captain is like bending over backwards, kissing his ass, and he's just a, radio man. A few years out of high school, Sparks they called him. That's the name for the radio operator. And then they get to Norfolk, Virginia. Well, but then he found out. I think he found out during the voyage. He's not alive now. He may have found out afterwards, but they discovered that he had his security clearance went through, and then they learned on the ship that he had a higher security clearance than the captain. And so when they finally get to Norfolk, Virginia, everybody has to swab the decks and wash the ship down and everything. And the captain handed him the keys to his car, the government car, and said, "Here, you go to town and have fun." So my dad got to get off the ship right when they got there and go into town and go have fun, Navy fun. Anyway, so he was in the NSA, told me several stories. I'll share those on later posts to keep each one of these pretty short. So anyway, I got a little inside view of the NSA back before the government acknowledged it was an agency.